Hello and welcome back to From the Be All End podcast. I'm Simon Evans, and with me is a full team today: Andrew Greaves, Chris Bowden, Paul Woodhouse and Justin Connolly. And later in the show we have a special guest. We'll be talking to former Manchester United defender, Burnley born, and with two relatives who've played for the club as well. Chris Casper joins us to look ahead to Burnley versus Manchester United. But before then, we'll get into all the topics and all the meat of it all with the full crew here. Manchester United coming to Turf Moor. Chris, you've seen plenty of times when Manchester United have come for Turf Moor and they've been in a bad run of form like they are now, and then it doesn't end as we might have hoped. What are your feelings about Saturday's game?
Well, I say you'd like to think, like you said, you look back, everyone remembers that famous night, or the Burnley's first home Premier League game when obviously beat the reigning champions with that Robbie Blake volley. They've only scored once at Turf since when Jay equalised last time out. One win in 16 against United in the Premier League. But they always seem to produce when no matter what form they're in. They're one of those sides that they'll bring Martial off the bench and he'll just pop up with a piece of magic from the edge of the box, or Rashford or a Fernandes. Pogba's usually had a good game, obviously not there anymore. But you just cannot write Manchester United off. I mean, they're not Premier League challengers anymore. It's 10, 11 years since they last won it. They're not Champions League perennial challengers in that anymore. They might win a domestic cup, but if they'll turn up on Saturday and you have not a clue what to expect.
Greavesy, you watched them against Bayern Munich, I believe. I watched that game as well. I wasn't impressed. And what were your feelings about the state of United at the moment?
Yeah, just before we started recording, me and Chris were talking, and Chris used the word rabble, and I think that's it. I mean, the defence is a rabble. The midfield is a rabble. Going forward, the lad Højlund looks pretty decent, but I'd still rather have Jamie. And Rashford, look at that. And Rashford is trying, but he's just surrounded by sulkers, by people who aren't good enough. And as you'll hear in the interview with Chris a bit later, he shares that sentiment, doesn't he? They just have this defence that they've pieced together. There's no identity. There's no. We've talked on off air enough times about Martinez and Anthony not being good enough. Obviously, Anthony, back in Brazil, he won't be playing. But I tell you what, I'd have loved Foster without getting all Kevin Keegan. I tell you, I'd have loved Foster to get at that United defence, whoever they play, whether it's Lindelof, whether it's Evans, whether it's Maguire, who I think's injured. I mean, I think they had 3 keepers on the bench yesterday. They took 4 keepers out to Munich because they've got this, mini injury crisis. They've got Sancho's been banished because he's fallen out with Ten Hag and the coaching staff. Rabble is probably the best word to describe them, as Chris said. They're just a mixture of badly put together players. Just a
Manchester United.
I sort of agree with what's been said, but I disagree about the Bayern Munich game. Actually, I thought they played pretty well that first half. I think that's probably one of the best halves they've put together, and I think they were hit by 2 goals on the break. That first goal, obviously, Onana should have saved that. Nobody's questioning that. And I think when they managed to get back into the game, and then they suffered with the VAR again, like we did, didn't they? I don't know what anyone else thinks, but I think to give a penalty for a situation like that, it is ludicrous. It's one of them It's one of them decisions like we got against Forest where you just sort of think, what's the point in playing the game if stuff like this is going to happen? But I think this game is a game. I know they're not obviously not the team they once were, and the problems that they've got trickling down through the club from the catastrophically incompetent ownership. They're not going anywhere, are they? And I agree that they're really vulnerable at the back. I read before that Varane might be back in the squad. I think he's probably the only world-class central defender they've really got. So that's bad news for us. But I think we could definitely cause them problems. We've got. I'm looking forward to those individual duels. I think if Casemiro's going to be looking after Amdouni, he's going to have his hands full, isn't he? And I wouldn't like to be facing Koleosho after the confidence builder of that game last week. Rashford looks like he's suffering a little dip in form, so that's all good news. I mean, but they are still dangerous, aren't they? They've still got those individual players who even when they're not playing well, can turn a game. But so I don't know. We might, if we can carry the form on from the Forest game, we might get something. But I think definitely Foster's going to be a massive miss.
He is. Woody, what are your thoughts about this one?
Well, they're a rabble of a shambles that can still bag three either off. So they're like a little wounded terrier, aren't they? I mean, which means it'll obviously be 0-0. But I genuinely think we can scare the living bejesus out of him. Because I think they'll turn up, their heads won't be in the right place. Half of them will be whining, the other lot will be moaning. So I think they'll have a slightly torrid time on the turf. And let's give it them.
The thing about United, the way that they play is like, I thought this under Solskjaer as well. They were quite effective on the counter-attack. And they won some big games under Solskjaer against, City, and had good performances against Liverpool at times by playing on the counter-attack. And it still looks to me like they'd be better off being a counter-attacking team. But there's something, about, the whole sort of... I remember Solskjaer winning one of those big games and like reading stuff where it's saying like, but this is the level Manchester United have sunk to. Yes, they can win, but they can only do it on the counter-attack. As though there's something wrong with playing on the counter-attack. I'd be worried if they came and played with Casemiro shielding the defence and looking to Rashford to break away. And if they played, I don't know who they play on the other side. But they've still got good players. It's going to be... I was listening to Company just now, a little bits of him, and he's definitely in manage expectation mode. I mean, he seems to do quite a lot of that, doesn't he, Andrew?
He does, and I think there's it is about managing expectations. We've just spent the last few minutes kind of slagging off United and saying you're a rabble and things like that. But, as Woody said, they've still got players who could come and take three off us again. You know what I mean? If we're not on as game. You just kind of think about that record Chris mentioned, 1 goal, the equaliser for Jay last year, 1 winning 16 against them. They're the kind of stats that over the last few years under Dyche in the Premier League, we went to Anfield, not once since 74. You go to Old Trafford, not once since X and all that lot. And I think it's, 8 o'clock Saturday kickoff's a weird time. Everything just feels a little bit kind of, our tails will be up after the Forest game. I think we'll want to prove something, having missed out on 3 points. I just wonder whether he will again change the system. He's going to have to because of Foster missing. I just wonder whether, we perhaps see Tresor in a number 10 role, Amdouni through the centre, you bring, Koleosho, and then you get somebody else. I just wonder whether he goes for the juggler early doors and kind of gets it to a point where, you blitz them like Forest did and then keep it tight at the back. Blitz them like Brighton did. Blitz them like Bayern Munich did last night in certain areas. They've got gaps everywhere to kind of feed into, and I think that's that for me would be what I'd do. Go, balls out. Let's try and get ahead of them.
If you could go to it was no surprise that Brighton mauled them last week. Not only beat them, mauled them. And if you can, if Burnley can play, similarly to Brighton, they're going to try and play out from the back as Brighton do. Will they play as intelligently as Brighton did? Will they be as clinical as Brighton were, as Bayern were. You know, it's one thing that I say that Burnley have created plenty of chances in games. I mean, even Monday night, you know, the little situations that, you know, weren't quite golden opportunities. But you know, on another night, you've got to be looking to put those away, really. But really encouraged by what we saw the other night. I think he'll probably play Amdouni for Foster. And then, you know, one of the wide options where Amdouni played, you know, maybe Trezor or you know, Zarori or Benson or Odegaard or Brun Larsen. It's unbelievable the sort of depth they've got in that area. So there's plenty of options. But actually, Amdouni did all right in that. You know, it's against City, he played like as the central one of the forwards, and with Foster, you know, in a wider zone, and you know, they're interchangeable, aren't they? Really, I don't think it will be a miss because he's had an absolutely fabulous start. But there's enough quality and enough depth.
Yeah, we've said it before, though, haven't we? I mean, I think position's like a vague concept for company. It's a front three, isn't it? It's a front three, and I almost think, you know, I saw somebody on Up the Clarets suggesting backliners we'd expect, but then kind of Brownhill and Cullen, Burge in front of them, and then this front three. So it's a 4-2-1-3. Trying to work out if that's 10 out of the up there. I think it is, and that's what you want. You know what I mean? You've got that shield of Cullen and Brownhill. You've got the energy of Brownhill. You've got him shielding Cullen, who's then shielding the back four. You've got Burge, who can then come out wide. I thought he looked brilliant when he was coming out wide. You know, that's how he got the you know, if we're going to take the Jose Mourinho route, that's how we got our winning goal on Monday night. And having that front three that can interchange, you know, you look at United, Reguilón and whoever's going to play a wing back at the other. Of course you'd want Koleosho getting after him. Of course you'd want Amdouni getting after. You know, you'd happily, that front three, just say, right, you just spread your wings. You do whatever you want. Interchange where you want. Just get at them. Test that keeper from distance. You know, hang balls in from set pieces. The set pieces have got to be better. Brownhill's set pieces, the one thing I've not missed from Josh Brownhill. Woeful again on Monday night. We've got to get better at set pieces. Crowd that keeper. Chris Casper later on will describe Onana as excitable. It's a brilliant word to describe him. He's all over the shop. He can't sit still. He's busy shouting. He's doing all this nonsense. Get at him. Put him under pressure. He will crack. That back four United will crack as well.
So we don't think that J-Rod's set for a recall against Manchester United, reliving his great winning goals against them?
Be surprised, wouldn't you? You know, like I say, I just think he'll one of the front three will just interchange and just drop one in. I'd like to see him play because you know, he's technically gifted. He's got a knack of a goal against United, and he'll bust a gut for his hometown club. But you know, but. Would anyone moan if he was in the starting line? I don't think so. I think he's still.
No, I don't think so. No.
Yeah. So he's another very, very good option that's available.
I think one of the biggest things really with Jay is I think he can be a real impact sub. You know, you can bring him on. You know, when you're perhaps looking at you needing someone in both boxes for set pieces. You know, the thing that Jay brings you, that I think Foster brings you, is that strength in his own area when we're defending corners. We've seen that in the opening games. You perhaps don't get that from Koleosho. You perhaps don't get that from Amdouni because of their stature. You know, Jay, for me, if you're only going to get X amount of minutes out of him because he's you're not going to get 90 out of him. Do you start him, let him wear him down and bring someone quicker on, or do you kind of, when they're a bit pliable and things like that, do you then bring Jay on like he came on against, was it Spurs or Villa? Villa, I think it was. You know, that for me, I think is where the impact you get from Jay in the Premier League these days. I think that impacts of last half an hour when Koleosho tires and you perhaps switch your system a little bit. Because again, we're not getting 90 minutes out of Koleosho at the minute because he's not quite at that level just due to the lack of football he's played at this, you know, senior men's level. So for me, I'd be bringing Jay on to make a real impact when you need both ends of the box. You need set pieces with someone of like his stature, height, strength, etc.
Yeah, I'd be tempted to play Jay, but I just have a feeling that we're going to see Trezor I just think it's, if he's the superstar that we've been told about and the player of the year from the Belgian league, what better way to make an impact in English football than playing against Manchester United at home, a beatable Manchester United? I think it's got like hero stuff written all over it as that. It'll be interesting to see if he does, because I don't know I haven't seen enough of him to know, but is he a winger or a number 10, or can he play both? What do we know about him?
Both, from what I've seen. He's just very direct, good at driving forward with the ball. I'd say a lot. If you look at his goal, his goal and assists reel, a lot of it's from central. A lot of it's left hand side. But like I say, if he's come to Burnley wanting to play, this is probably one of the first games on the list, isn't it? If I'm coming to you, I want to play against Man United and Arsenal and Chelsea and Liverpool and City. And if in terms of the fee, maybe not the marquee signing, but in terms of impact, he might be the one that has the biggest of all. But say Belgian Player of the Year. He's on the fringes of that senior setup in Belgium, and I say no better way to put yourself on the radar.
Are you saying he's going to be the guy to replace Foster's straight lines?
I think when he came on Monday, he showed some really nice touches, didn't he?
Yeah.
There was a little bit of class about him, and you could see it straight away. My worry about it is if you're going to stick Amdouni up top and in behind him, that sort of changes the dynamic of the team completely, doesn't it? Whereas I think J-Rod is a bit more of a direct replacement, sort of kind of can play in a similar way, Connie, with his back to goal as Foster does, strong and lay it off and stuff. But we have changed our style from time to time, haven't we? We don't always play the same way. We do what it takes to whatever company thinks we need to win the game or do well in the game. I think that's one of the things we've got over United. I've seen them play a few times, and this season and last season. And I'm not overly convinced by Ten Hag. I think there's quite a lot of what Gary Neville talks about, which is kind of trying to solve problems in game rather than having a plan that you can execute, and they have got the superstars that can do that. They can, find a goal from nowhere. But I think we've got a really clear, we set our stall out, don't we? This is what we're going to do. And we just go ahead and do it. And I think that might be something we can take encouragement from for Saturday, because if we can play the game in their half and put them under pressure with the talent we've got up front, it doesn't really matter really which four he chooses. They're all capable of creating chances and scoring goals.
So Brighton's changes were quite subtle, weren't they? They were saying if you look at the way he usually splits the centre backs, but he realised that the United strength was sort of central, and he split them wider and pushed the fullbacks further on, and all of a sudden they were just playing. They beat United down the flanks rather than sort of playing through the thirds as such. And
they weren't able to press in the same way up front, were they? No. And it was kind of, but they didn't have any answer to that, which makes me sort of wonder if there is a plan B when things go wrong.
I do wonder.
Talk about identity, yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
It's identity. Identity is the thing with United, isn't it? He's been here for a couple of years, Ten Hag, and he's still are they a counter-attack side? Are they a possession side? He's brought the keeper in for him to be a possession side, but they brought a keeper in to be good with his feet, and haven't really got the defence around him to utilise that. So rather than a keeper who wasn't great with his feet, they've now got one who's not great with his hands. And they're at the end of the day, they'd be better off with Tom Heaton in goal, wouldn't they?
Yeah. I thought that last night. Yeah. I saw a stat when they were 2-0 down last night. I think I sent it to you, Sam. This season, Onana had faced 12 shots and he'd let in 9 when they were 2-0. Now, he made a couple of decent saves between 2-0 and 3-1 when Harry Kane scored his penalty slightly. I agree with Justin. I think I think the decision is just ludicrous. But that's the kind of keeper you've got. I think the most damning thing last week, and you touched on it, or Justin touched on it, the press. I mean, the lack of press from Man United, the lack of effort to go and press the ball. That's what good teams are built on these days. We press when we sense a chance to kind of get a team to hit it long. We did it against City, and it worked well enough in terms of, never seen Ederson play so many long balls because of the press. But it wasn't just pressing for pressing's sake. At times we were hanging back. United, I watched some of the Brighton game back earlier this week, and it was shocking to see the lack of urgency in the United press. And Brighton, we've seen Brighton against Liverpool where, somebody will literally just put their foot on the ball, invite the press, then and it became just too easy for Brighton. If you kind of went, right, you've never seen a game of football before, who's the big club out of these two? Who's the club that's dominated English football for, or dominated English football for many, many years, have an identity, the United way of doing things? You wouldn't pick Man United, you'd pick Brighton, because De Zerbi, even though he's not been in for that long, I know he's been in kind of, a season and a bit now, or just about a season, I think. That identity was just there straight away. It was there last season. I thought they might struggle this season. No real signs of that. They're kicking on. Signings have been good. United's recruitment has been poor since before Ferguson left. Let's be honest. Solskjaer's had his say this week about Ronaldo looking and feeling like the right idea, and it turned out to be shite. That goes throughout the whole club. United are a shambles.
I'm starting to get the feeling this is going to be one of those podcasts that we listen back to in a few days.
We'll just put this out on Monday morning.
But you see, I think one of the goals. One of the goals last night, I think John Walters was highlighted. I think the referee outpaces 4 United players to get much like I used to moan about the referee jogging past Jeff Hendrick for Son's wonder goal. Where he just walked through the Burnley defence the length of the field. But the referee's got more desire to get back into the Burnley's 18-yard box than Jeff Hendrick. But McTominay again, the one area of his game you expect him to bust a gut, and the referee's jogging past him. It's just shameful. It's not. But you look back at the United way was 4-4-2, flying wingers. Get the ball to the 2 centre forwards, and football's changed. And I long think, they tried to adapt, didn't they? They tried to, going back over 20 years, you bring a Veron in, didn't quite work. They tried to make, bring a more continental style of play, and it never really took off.
Right.
Ended up the best United side in recent memory is the one with Ronaldo, Rooney, and Tevez up front. And for all their ability, my God, they didn't have good after 3 of them.
You do look at United almost like I look at Everton. How many top managers or managers who've been big managers elsewhere have come into that club and not made a do of it? Mourinho, Van Gaal, they've had a couple of shitters. Let's not beat about the bush. They've made a couple of bad appointments, but they've had these big managers who've won stuff everywhere they've gone. Jose, and they get to United, and the whole place is an absolute dog's dinner. The recruitment's poor. We talked so many times about who could they have got. They could have got Haaland, turned it down. Could have got Bellingham, turned it down. Could have got X, could have got Y, turned it down.
Well, Bellingham turned them down, didn't they? I think.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But it's that, you know what I mean? It's that kind of, it just, as a United fan, I know plenty of United fans, and it's just, Ten Hag, you look at and go, is he the elite manager? And I thought he was at the start. You kind of go, you know what, he's got good pedigree. But it's just, I think it's, they're light years behind everybody else. They're absolutely light years. They won't get top 4 this year. They might not even get top 7 because there's too many clubs.
They might be as good. They might be as good as Aston Villa, who whooped us on the turf. I mean, what do Burnley have to do to avoid a 4th straight home game where it's good spells? Good spell.
Learn from the lessons. Don't push too far forward. Play left back at left back. I think we've got over that hurdle now. Square pegs, round holes against Villa. Pushing too deep, balls over the top, bad positioning for the goalkeeper, etc., etc. Learn your lessons. That's all you got to do. You learn your lessons. And Villa are a better side the
A
better setup,
better
they've got
identity,
better identity.
Mm.
I am not worried about United as much as I'm worried about Villa. I'm not saying we're going to beat United, not going to say we're even going to get a draw, but I think we've got a better chance in hindsight, having looked at Villa. United are nowhere near Villa. Nowhere near.
Mm.
Not even close.
It's staggering, isn't it, when you know, to put that down in black and white.
Definitely.
Well, it's going to be an interesting one. Another big game on Turf Moor. I mean, tough start to the season, but it's a really, really good test. Is this one, having had that experience at Forest, where the team has shown that they're still alive and they've got solutions to things and improving. So we'll see how they do against Manchester United. After this break, we're going to go into it all with Chris Casper and talk a little bit about Salford City as well, where he works, and of course who Burnley play next week in the Carabao Cup. But that's all coming up after the break. So to look ahead to the Manchester United visit to Turf Moor on Saturday, we have with us somebody who's got connections to both clubs, very strong connections to both clubs. Chris Casper, former Manchester United player, and of course a Burnley lad and son of Frank Casper, former Burnley manager and player for the younger listeners. Chris now works at Salford City as a sporting director there, so we will be able to talk to him a little bit about Tuesday's upcoming game between Salford City and Burnley, but thought we'd pick his brains a little bit about the visit of United to Turf Moor. Chris, it's not been a great start to the season for either team, really. Burnley obviously picked up a little bit with that performance at Forest. United coming into this game on the back of what was a strange sort of game against Bayern Munich, really, wasn't it? But what's your impressions of the two teams so far in these very early stages of the campaign?
Yeah, I think you're right, Simon. It's been a little bit indifferent start for both teams, really. I think starting with Burnley, I think, Man City, Aston Villa and Tottenham, I think probably will be all in the top six. So it was one heck of a tough start. A new team again that Vincent's put together, but you could see especially in the Tottenham game, the first 20-25 minutes, I thought Burnley were excellent, and you could see the progression that has been made, and then obviously on Monday night a really good performance, and apart from a really poor VAR decision, would have won the game. So you can see the progression. Manchester United are, I don't know, they're in, I wouldn't say a transition, but they've not had a great transfer window. I can't say they have. The lad, Højlund, looks a very, very good player, but again, he's still finding his feet. I still don't think they're settled in defence. I think, they've kept one clean sheet all season, and that was in the Wolves game when we all know that Wolves had probably more chances at Old Trafford than anybody has over the last 25 years. And obviously the penalty towards the end, right at the end, that they should have had conceded against them. So I think Burnley can definitely get to United if they get on the front foot. But yeah, it could go either way, really. I think Burnley defensively looked better on Monday. I think Charlie Taylor adds that bit of experience and quality. I've always liked Charlie. I think he's a top player. So hopefully, we're on the right track, and I know obviously, Vincent knows what he's doing, and the staff and the new players are looking now more and more looking like they're gelling together, which is great.
Just looking at United, you mentioned the defence there, and the midfield, I guess, is the same, isn't it? There's no real settled midfield in what he wants to do. And do you think part of the problem is that people don't fear United? I mean, you'll remember under Fergie, nobody wanted to go to Old Trafford. Nobody wanted to get there. But now you've got teams like Nottingham Forest taking 2 goals off them, Brighton beating them 3-1 in their own back. There's all these kind of, that fear factor almost appears to have gone out of Man United. Yet last night against Bayern Munich, towards the end, you could see that desire. You could see that kind of flashes of what they're able to do. I guess, with your kind of Salford hat on, you want to make home ground somewhere where teams don't want to turn up at. Do you think there's almost a chance that playing away from home, there's a bit more freedom, a bit less expectation on them, because they've lost that fear factor at Old Trafford?
Yeah, I think they definitely have, Andrew. I did MUTV the other day with the debate, and they were talking about the Brighton game, and a lot of the talk was about Brighton coming to Manchester United and what a good team they are. And it was like, hang on a minute, with all respect, it's Brighton coming to Manchester United and coming to Old Trafford. In the past, that would just have been a game that United they'd have won the game. They'd have, blown any opposition away, or most opposition away. But, a club like Brighton, like I say, who've been unbelievable. The recruitment of players has been fantastic. But the United would still have had too much for Brighton. They came the other day, Brighton, and basically, dominated United. And it's not the fortress it used to be. And they might be better off going away, hitting teams on the counter-attack with Pelestri, who's got good pace, who's a really good attacking player. Obviously, Marcus Rashford, and obviously, the new lad Højlund. So we have to be careful of that. But, defensively, it can definitely get to them. If Burnley get on the front foot, if we got on the front foot, then, we could score goals. I have grave reservations about Onana, the keeper. I think he's my worst nightmare as a keeper, with all respect. I think he's very excitable. I don't like excitable keepers. I say to my lad Charlie, just stay calm. Even if you make a mistake, just stay nice and calm. Don't try and rectify it straight away. And it's, there are a lot of problems at Manchester United, and the club itself is changed so much since, when I was there, and the lack of leadership and the lack of strategy seems to be it's unacceptable, really, that a club like that can be in the situation that they are now. Like I said, people, question the owners, obviously the Glaziers and that, but I just think internally, the people doing the recruitment and, the leadership in itself, I think is really, really poor. But, hopefully that's the Burnley's advantage on Saturday.
It's almost chalk and cheese with the kind of Burnley recruitment, isn't it? In terms of, all these players Burnley have picked up cheap, hoping to make big money on. I mean, we keep hearing that, Haaland was offered to Manchester United. Bellingham was offered to Manchester United. All these players were offered to Manchester United and battered away in terms of, we know better and things like that. It's kind of strange, but just wanted to pick up on Charlie, because we didn't mention him in the intro, because we wanted to pick up on kind of his experience within that kind of, Vincent Kompany regime. He's clearly, from Vinny's point of view, somebody who he's got a lot of faith in and sees as somebody who's, got a real chance of making it. How's he finding the kind of dynamics working with the likes of Errol Muric and James Trafford? I guess Trafford, being closer to his age, is almost the kind of carrot on the end of the stick, is he, in terms of this is what could happen if you work hard and kind of, set your stall out as a keeper?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, Charlie, I know it's easy to say, but talks of Vincent and the coaches in the highest of esteem. That, the detail of work and the level of work that they do is absolutely brilliant. His goalkeeping coach, Yella, is brilliant as well. Goes into a lot of detail with Charlie on his games and spends a lot of time with him. And, it's great when you've got those kind of experiences as a young player, that you are with the first team. He's a long way off the first team, and he knows that at this moment in time. But for Vincent to bring in a young English goalkeeper, I think is actually really positive for Charlie, because he will put his trust in young English goalkeepers, which is great. So, and Trafford is a top keeper. He's been unfortunate to have conceded a few goals this season. Obviously the first 3 games in particular, but I think he's not had much chance with any of them, really, but I think he will develop into a really top keeper.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when you look at the way Kompany has approached things, that with young players, that he does seem to, like we've seen with Koleosho, who he brought in, who most of us, when we saw that signing, he's had a few sub appearances for Espanyol, he's 18 years old, we'll probably see him emerge in some League Cup games, and maybe, next season sometime we might see him more regularly. And he's thrown him straight in seen something on the training ground that makes him think I can, he'll develop better by actually playing in the first team. That must give a lot of confidence to young players when they see an 18-year-old kid thrown in like that and thrive in that situation. Yeah.
I think I totally agree, Simon. I think it's great for the club. It's great for the under 21s and the 18s that there is that development and that pathway there, that it will put trust in young players. And if you're good enough, then you're going to play no matter how old you are. When we were put in the same situation at United, Ferguson wouldn't, hold back on putting a young player in. That's just the way that the club was. And, hopefully Vincent and Burnley are going down the same route of putting young players in, developing them, putting the trust in them. I think that's the most important thing as well. There's nothing better than as being a young player when your manager has confidence and trust in you. It makes you thrive. And, the Burnley fans want young players, and they want young players to come through as well. So I think it's great for the club all round that those kind of, it would be dead easy just for Vincent and the club to recruit experienced players to try and stay in the division, but that's not his style, and he will put 100% confidence in himself as a coach that he can develop these players, and obviously he did that last year, and it looks like he'll do the same this year as well.
Yeah, it's interesting to see those kind of players coming through, and we haven't really had that for a long time at Burnley with those kind of signings. A player coming in from abroad who's young, it's almost the opposite really of what Sean looked to recruit, isn't it? But who's impressed you from the players that company has brought in either this season or last season? Who stands out to you as a player that you really enjoy watching, or that you think might have a future at a bigger club down the line?
Yeah, I've been impressed this year with Lyle Foster. Unfortunately, he obviously got sent off the other day, but he was one last year. With all respect, Ashley Barnes and Jay Rodriguez played most of the games up front and that. And when he came on, it was difficult for him to get into games. He got the odd chance in the League Cup and things like that. But again, it was difficult. But, this year he looks like he's developed again, been working on the training ground. And like I say, he'll be kicking himself for that bit of impetulancy of the day, really, because for Burnley to lose him for 3 games is going to be a big loss, really. So to see someone like that develop has been great. Obviously, Benson, every time he gets the ball, you get on the front, on the edge of your seat with him. And the goals he scored last year, and obviously the goal he scored at Ewood Park, I was right behind the goal with the Burnley fans, and as soon as he hit it, it was in the top corner. And I think he'd done that for the last 2 or 3 games. Zarori as well, exciting. So there's been a lot of good signings, but I think as well,
Bayer as a centre half, you must appreciate Jordan Bayer's play watching it as a former centre half yourself.
Yeah, Bayer, I think he's got a real future ahead of him. I thought Harwood Bellis as well last year. I don't know where he's ended up actually. He went Southampton. Yeah. I thought we'd have, I hoped he was going to come back, but obviously that didn't happen. But yeah, and I think the experienced players as well, your Connor Roberts and your Cullens and people like that have really stepped up, and I thought they were outstanding last year. Some really good professionals. So yeah, it's an exciting time. So yeah.
Greavsey?
So you touched there on kind of Vincent giving himself 100% back into develop players. Do you think that's part of the problem with United? I mean, Ten Hag's kind of brought in a few players who he knows from Ajax, and as much as you're not convinced by the keeper, I've never been convinced by Anthony or Martinez or any of the, his kind of recruitment feels like it's safe rather than, the kid Højlund looks like that kind of perfect signing. His value has skyrocketed in 12 months from when he signed for Atalanta and then come to United. Do you think there's almost Ten Hag not backing himself to bring in younger, exciting players and develop him? He's almost kind of falling back into players who he feels have done well for him in the past. But there's a big gap between Ajax, with the greatest of respect, and Manchester United, and even where Manchester United are now, back in the Champions League, that gap's massive, isn't it?
Yeah, like I say, going back to our day, Manchester United always broke the transfer record. You know, going right back to '89 with Gary Pallister, and then again with Roy Keane, and then again with Jaap Stam, Rio Ferdinand, Wayne Rooney, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
They always added the best the best players to a really good squad and a younger squad. Now it looks like he's going safe. He's going with players that he knows. And like you say, you mentioned before, Bellingham should have signed. You know, Harry Kane should have signed. In the past, they'd have been done. 100% they'd have been done. And now there's something clearly wrong with the recruitment, that they are letting those players slip through the fingers. It's absolute nonsense, really, that can happen. It just doesn't look settled at all. You just wouldn't know what team Manchester United is going to put out. And the young players coming through, again, with all respect, the academy, obviously Garnacho could play Saturday, but you know, he's not a Manchester United developed player, really. He's been, you know, brought in as a young squad player, really. There used to be a real steady stream. Every team, right from the under 12s, always had a superstar waiting to come through. You know, obviously Mason Green is an unfortunate one and whatever, but top player, and you know, some great players, obviously Marcus Rashford and people like that. There doesn't seem to be that streamline of young kids anymore, and I say it stems right from the top. You know, from the academy being the foundation of the club, seems to be now it's not, and you know who is driving the recruitment, I just wouldn't know. So yeah, it's a funny one. It's a disappointing one, really, when you see a club like that, and you still obviously got connections that they're all over the place, and now will they finish in the top four? It's going to be really difficult, because you saw Spurs the other day. I mean, Spurs were just so good. You know, Aston Villa, I thought, were outstanding, and you got Man City as well that played in. You know, it was a great time to play Man City, because the first game of the season, they're just getting into the stride. I mean, once they get into the stride, they'll be unstoppable. Then you've got Liverpool, you've got Arsenal, you've got Chelsea, like I said, Brighton, Newcastle. Man United's got to get in the top four at least, and at this moment in time, you just can't see that.
No, you're right. It's a strange situation of that club. It's funny, somebody was talking, or I saw a clip actually that was flying around on social media about how United missed out on Paul Gascoigne, and what a shock that was at the time, that Ferguson had gone for a player who was the top young player in England that time, and he'd slipped through his fingers and ended up going to Spurs. And there's all sorts of stories about how that happened. And probably you could say Shearer was another one who Fergie apparently was very, very keen on signing and didn't get it done. But we remember those because they were so rare. Because as you say, like United used to go and get all those players. You know, every year they would go and pick somebody from a top club as well. It's strange to see. Having said all that, quite often in the Premier League era that Burnley have been in, we've played United at a time where you think, oh, this is a really good time to play United. And then they come to Turf Moor, and that individual quality that they still have in the team, a Bruno Fernandes or a player, turns out to be just a little bit too much for Burnley. That was the case most of the Sean Dyche era anyway. There's still a chance that happens, isn't there? As bad as United have been recently, they do have a lot of quality individual players there, like Rashford, who could kill a team like Burnley.
Yeah, they've still got loads of quality in the team. There's no question about it. Like I said, Bruno and Casemiro scored a couple of goals last night, I think.
Yeah.
You know, so going forward, they can still be a real threat. Obviously, we mentioned Højlund. He got his goal last night as well, so he'll be getting up to speed. But defensively, they've always had good defenders. They've always been solid at the back. They've always built the foundations well at the back. Like I say, going right back to Bruce and Pallister and Ferdinand and Vidic and Stam and people like they've always had good defenders, and now with all they've got 8. They finished the game at Arsenal with I think Harry Maguire and
Johnny Evans.
Now again, outstanding players, no question about it, but would they be the first choice if Eriksen, if Ten Hag had the all his fit players? Possibly not. But why should they not be playing as well? But they've just not got the foundations right at the back. They've not got that solidity. And like I say, with the goalkeeper who is very, very excitable, it just leads to uncertainty right through the team, and especially in the back four, which is where I think Burnley can we can really get about them and cause them problems.
Yeah, it could end up being Jay Rodriguez up there, couldn't it? Because with Lau Foster out, Company doesn't have many central attacking options, and Jay has quite a good record against United over the years. His movement would offer something different from Foster, wouldn't it? I know he's not as young as he once was, but could be an interesting one. That Jay probably fancies chances of where United's backline's been the last few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, he's an experienced player. He's been an outstanding servant for the club. He could cause problems. But is it, how do you pronounce it? Kolosho? Is that Kolosho?
Yeah.
And those kind of players who, again, if they play like they did on Monday, will cause United problems. They run forward and attack. I'm
Dooney.
I'm struggling.
We've all got to get used to it, Chris. I know it's a new thing for Burnley.
Yeah, he scores a great goal. So they have got real attacking threats and options now. So hopefully can get about them and cause them problems.
Let's throw it ahead to Tuesday then. After this, so Burnley take on United at the weekend, and then a trip to your club, Salford City. You must be looking forward to that, or are you not really? Is it a little bit of a mixed feeling thing when it's two of your clubs, if you like? Yeah,
I mean it's the first time it's happened, so
yeah.
I've got to remain professional and do my job right. But I've had quite a few ticket requests and things like that from the Burnley fans, and I know they're looking forward to it. And I think the Burnley end is 1,500 at Salford in the Burnley, in the away end, and I think the tickets went in half an hour. So there'll be a lot of Burnley fans wanting to come to Salford because it's the first time they'll visit the stadium. The new, it's a new ground for a lot of fans at Burnley who, over the past 25, 30 years have been in every all four leagues. So they'll have visited most of the, if not all, the away grounds in the divisions apart from Salford. So there'll be a real interest from them. Say it's 35, 40 minutes down the road. So there'll be a really good atmosphere at the game. It's a really tight ground that, like I say, it does forge a really good atmosphere and should be a great game as well, because we play in a style that, we pass the ball from the back. We like to build from the back in the same way that Burnley do. So it would be a real technical game and hopefully an exciting one.
I think it's really interesting. We were chatting before about League Two and your start to the season, but having that philosophy, I guess you'll have the kind of belief that we have in Vincent getting it right. You'll have that belief that actually, if you build a philosophy and you build a style of play, and then you get every single player buying into that style of play, that sooner or later, whether it's this season or whether it's next season, that will start to breed success. I mean, that must be quite exciting for you as a sporting director to be able to kind of help dictate an identity and a style of play, and then basically, watch your head coach go out and do it. Head coach you know really well and you've worked with before. There must be a real excitement that this project, which we know of as the Class of 92 project, on the field could really become something in the next, if not this season, the next season or the season after.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to have an identity, and it's important to identify the right head coach that's going to provide that identity. And I think with Neil Wood, we've got that. We were really unfortunate in the playoffs last year just to miss out on penalties in the semi-final, which was obviously difficult to take. But Again, from year upon year upon year, we've improved the league position. So yeah, I think it's important, like I say, to have that identity, and then when you've got that, it becomes really easy not easy, but it becomes a lot more simple to recruit the players, because you know what the manager wants, the way that he wants to play, and basically you ask the question of the recruitment guys, can this player fit into that system? And the way that they identify players and what they've got to do to identify players makes it an awful lot simpler for them as well, because they know in the way that we want to play, whether that's a centre half from the back who's good with the ball, passing it out. The goalkeeper has to be good with his feet. The midfielders have to be able to play on the half turn and be able to be comfortable in possession of the ball. We have to have pace in the wide areas, which we've got. And a striker in Matt Smith that actually, when you look at his profile, you'll say, well, does he really fit the identity? Well, when he's 6'6" and he can get hold of the ball, and when you're crossing the ball and he scores the amount of goals that he does, then yeah. And if you get players playing off him and around him and running off him, so we've got, like I say, a real identity, and it's hopefully running through the club now. We've just achieved Category 3 status for the academy, which means now we've got 9s to 16s, and it's the first year that we've done that. That will take time to develop, but from the first team to the B team to the under 18s to the 9s to 16s, hopefully you get that playing philosophy that is, your identity, and it is clearly seen. And I think it's the way that people want to play anyway, and what fans want to see. They want to see good football. They want to see attacking football, penetrating football where players are running in behind, the ball's getting slid in behind, crosses into the box, and controlled possession. So hopefully we've got that. Like I say, we've not had the best of starts this year through, some bad luck really and injuries. But we have beaten 2 championship teams in the cup, which, and 2 good teams, in Preston and Leeds. So yeah, the signs are okay. Signs are getting there that we'll be okay again this year.
I mean, slightly surprised it's not on TV. I think a lot of Burnley fans are slightly surprised it's not on TV. Local derby, like you say, 2 styles of football, which should make for a really interesting clash. I mean, it almost seemed perfect for TV. Yet, I don't know who's on, but it'd be somebody who's been on already, won't it? I'm guessing. But are you a bit surprised that you've not got a bit more exposure because of that style of playing? Showcasing against a team like Burnley.
Yeah, absolutely. We were on in the last round though, so I think they probably try and share it around a little bit, and I think they get a bit of stick because I think out of the lower leagues we were on more than anybody. And
then there's the Gary connection, so people are going about that as well.
Yeah. Disappointing. I thought we were absolutely nailed on for the game to be on Sky or TV, whatever it's going to be. But yeah, disappointing that.
Just before we wrap up, I was just interested in what you're saying there about the style of play, because I think a lot of people who don't watch football in the bottom two divisions probably don't realise how much it's changed over the last, I would say, 5 years, really. I mean, I when I was back in England, I used to go on Stanley quite a bit if there wasn't a Burnley game or a game that I was covering. And I was amazed over the last 2 or 3 years how many teams came to a ground like Accrington Stanley and were playing out from the back with a goalkeeper who's decent with his feet. And it seems like those days of, the English lower divisions being the sort of last bastion of sort of direct football and Route 1 football. I mean, I know there are some teams who are very good at doing that. But am I right there that it's changed significantly, hasn't it? Is that the influence of sporting directors, coaches going through different education processes? Why do you think that's happened?
I think you probably go right back to Barcelona, the way that they played right back in the mid 2000s, and then obviously the influence of Pep Guardiola, the Spanish teams of 2012, 2014, I think it was. The tiki-taka football, and everybody, once that kicked in, everybody wanted to be that and become the coaches of, like, say, Guardiola and Jurgen Klopp and people like that. And I think the education system's changed an awful lot. The the FA's way of playing and coaching has drastically changed. Even, when I was doing my badges, it's a lot more different in the style of education and the style of coaching. I think, I worked at the Premier League, and when we delivered the EPPP, the Elite Player Performance Plan, I think that's had a big impact on young coaches. Access to players, they're getting more coaching. I've done a session with a group today, joined in today, and the pace in which they play is absolutely frightening. The technique they've got these days is absolutely phenomenal. And I think that runs all the way through the system. And I think that's why you're seeing the kind of style of play now, that players are technically that good, that they're so comfortable in possession of the ball. Tactically, the coaches have got so much access to analysis, whether that's pre-match analysis of the opposition, post-match analysis. Even our under 18s, we play Bolton on Saturday. We just analysed Bolton's performance and how we're actually going to approach the game. And that's accessible these days, and everybody they'll have done the same with us. It's just that accessible. So there's so many factors now that comes into play with the style of play and how people want to coach, how people want to play. And it's definitely changed over the last 10, 15 years. Long gone are the days where, and you'll always get the occasional one. I mean, we played at Stevenage last year, and fair play to them. They went up, on a not a great budget, I suppose, but Steve did a great job. Steve Evans, they were direct, and they were the first to admit it. They got some good players, and they knew how to play, and they were well coached in the way that they knew they wanted to play. And again, this year they've done well. I think they're towards the top, for Stevenage to be competing at the top of League One with, some really strong teams in there is testament to that. So there is still one or two teams around that do, will play in that way. But I think in general now it's changed an awful lot, especially, like I say, in the bottom tiers and even the Conference North. There's a lot of teams want to play in the same way.
Yeah. It's going to be an interesting one. I think we all look forward to seeing that on Tuesday. We all look forward to Saturday. Chris, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you coming on, especially at short notice like that. It's been great talking to you, and all the best.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks very much for listening to this episode. We'll be back, of course, after the United game with another episode on Monday, looking back on everything that happened in that game and looking ahead a little bit to the Salford City game. And, of course, if you do follow us on a podcast service, then please do subscribe, rate us, leave us a comment, and do let us know on social media as well. If you have any ideas for guests or what you think about the show, let us know. Positive or negative, we can take it. And we're at B-Hole Podcast on Twitter and Facebook. Look forward to hearing from you. And until next time, have a great weekend.